Good morning, Steve. How are you doing today?
Doing well, Craig. Good morning. How are you?
Doing well, doing well. We'll just let people funnel in for the next couple minutes and then we'll get into it.
Love that. Thank you so much for doing these. Let's let the community know that there's no compensation that you get for these in any way. And this is just because you've been, correct me if I'm wrong, just a long time person in this business with us. And just on my behalf, on the company's behalf, the community's behalf, Craig, thank you very, very much.
Thank you. It's been almost 5 years, over 5 years now, I think.
It's amazing.
So we'll give it like 2-3 minutes and then we'll begin.
Yeah. Let's take a look at some of the opening comments. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning, Jim. Dark Watcher, good to see you here. Extra Cash. Hello. What a Friday. Hey, Craig, what
Yeah,
about
it
that?
was a good Friday. I listened to that round table with Roger Hamilton. Excellent conversation with all the other CEOs involved as well.
Yeah. I listened to it too. I listened to it yesterday. The chat was fascinating. The actions were fascinating. I was happy to be able to share that last year I had kind of um, started concocting, like I'd mentioned it, an S1, which is an offering of registered securities that would give an NFT that would give a share of revenue, right? In order to still give people an equity and a profit piece that would pay. And for those who were with us at the time, remember I was kind of hinting and teasing on stuff because there's only so much you can say when things are in progress like that. So I was happy to be able to get out in public and share, hey guys, always concerned about the stock and thinking about creative ways to raise money for the company. We're an an early stage growth tech company. We need money. And I always want to return investors things that we possibly can. So I think that idea still has legs. But we'll see. We'll see how it goes. Anyways,
Yeah,
happy to share it finally.
yeah, that sounds like a great plan. Hopefully it does come through.
Yeah, thanks, Greg. It's like I've got all the I's dotted and T's crossed. We actually started on the S1 on it. And as the market in general kind of started taking a crap last year, we kind of held off on it. Obviously, and we just entered in that basic, we just ended up issuing that basic NFT. But it's still in my mind, I still think it's a good idea. I think that you could fund startups that way. Um, I think it is a way to protect yourself from shorting and give people a security that has liquidity and guaranteed payback. So I'll keep thinking about it.
Yeah, I'd definitely be interested in that.
Yeah,
But
great.
it's about 12:04. Let's get this show on the road.
I'm in.
All right.
All
Welcome
yours.
everyone to another Ask Me Anything with CEO of AITX and Robotic Assistance Devices, Steve Reinharz. My name is Craig Peterson, and I will be moderating today's Ask Me Anything. I am a retail investor, and I used to be a member of the board of advisors. I'd like everyone to subscribe, sign up for notifications to this YouTube channel, and stay up to date. Steve always does a weekend update, so make sure you subscribe to that and watch it every weekend, usually on Saturdays. Also, make sure to check out AITX.ai, radlightmyway.com, radsecurity.com, and make sure to follow Steve on Twitter. His handle is Steve Reinharz.
Thank you so much for that, Craig. Yeah, we're about to break 16,000 on Twitter. I'd like to get there. So if you haven't subscribed, please give me a subscribe there too. Thanks.
All right, Steve. So we have a bunch of questions already submitted through our Discord, and we'll try to get through all the Discord questions, Twitter questions, YouTube questions in about the next hour or so. So if there's anything you want to say before we jump into it.
Yeah, sure. I want to say wow on Friday's stock action. So we can certainly talk about that. And I'm just looking at the chat right here, and M4X Can said, I have an unimportant question. when Steve is on camera, what does he have open on all of his screens? What is he always looking at? Well, I'll answer, right? This isn't Ask Me Anything. So right now I'm looking at the YouTube chat thing on my right. I have some other chats open with members of AITX, staff members of AITX, to give me points and ideas over here. And those are kind of the two main things that I'm looking at here. When I'm doing the Saturday videos, I generally have my notes, my bullet form notes of what things I want to go through on it. So that's basically what I'm looking at. Maybe I'm sneaking out an email if something's boring or something like that. I don't know, but that's about it. Anyway, CP. So that's it. I'm ready for the questions. Hit me.
All right. So I went through all the questions and I kind of organized them best as I could. So let's start with some production and backlog questions.
Okay.
Can you talk about how production is keeping up with sales, if it is?
Yeah. So I wouldn't say that production is keeping up with sales right now. I would say that the backlog is growing faster than we're shipping out devices for sure. It's been the case for the last several months. The reasons are, well, there's a few reasons, right? There's no one silver bullet, but mostly the reasons come down to complicated supply chain with ever evolving product. So the move from ROSA 180 to ROSA 3.0 was a pretty big lift. The move we're finishing the transition on right now from 3.0 to 3.1 is again a fairly big lift. And at the same time, we're having to make decisions as to what to buy for the 3.1 builds because we've got 3.2 around the corner. And 3.2 is going to be the build that we run with for the conceivable future. We don't have a major revision to ROSA or the 3.0 series on the books at this time. So the idea is to stabilize the build, stabilize production, become more regular with it. And managing all these moving elements is just difficult, and you're dealing with some time frames from some manufacturers that are longer than you want, and then you change something, or we realize, from a previous deployment that something needs to change, so we make a modification in production. So those are just a bit of kind of a short summary as to why we have that problem. It's a problem that pretty much every company has. If you produce stuff, you're always subject to constraints of your supply chain. You always do the best you can to have redundant sources, but then you also get let down by some of your sub-manufacturers. During the pandemic, this was particularly apparent, where you would get a quote for something from a sub-manufacturer, let's say for a shell or for a circuit board or for something like that, and they'd say, okay, no problem, 6 weeks. So you plan your production and your staffing and your other equipment coming in for the 6 week time frame that the manufacturer gave you, and then literally at 5 weeks, in many cases they would come back and they say, we decided we're not going to do that order anymore, so back to the drawing board for you. So during the pandemic, we had multiple supply chains going on at the same time. Things have calmed down a lot, but it's really has to do with change management that we're doing, which slows down production. I do see very soon, next couple months, us getting ahead of the backlog and leaving built product on the shelf, particularly ROSAs, ROSA Ps, for quick ship to customers, which is something, one of our big moves for fiscal 24, which we start on March 1st.
Okay, like I remember maybe a year or two ago that you issued a press release stating that roses and avas would be quick ship,
Yeah.
under 72 hours. So that's
Yeah.
the plan again?
Yeah, it's still the plan. It's still the objective. We're not there. I will say that things have gotten a lot better, but and I'm going to share how and why that has happened, but I'm not going to, shirk away from identifying that, hey, we're still having some challenges in this area, as is many people, i.e. car manufacturers. But even before we go there, I do want to just thank everybody new for joining us. I know you did it earlier, but I want to do it again. I think we had over 1,000 new visitors to AITX over the past couple of days, which is a big number for anybody, especially for a small slash micro cap. So very, very, very cool. Thank you everybody for being on board. What we have been able to do, because it's not like supply chain has totally closed up. It's not like where things aren't moving. Things are moving. We're just managing a fluid situation. Is in many cases we have been able to honor quick ship requests from customers. We're just kind of moving stuff around. So if we're doing a big build for somebody, we'll take 3 units, ship them out, backfill, and so forth. So it's much better than it's been last year, and it'll continue to get better.
Okay. Have there been any complaints from customers about the extended lead times?
Very, very, very few. The reason is that we're kind of the only game in town for what we do. So it's, everybody wants their stuff right away, right? They're ordering it, they want it. But we have gotten good during the sales process of setting proper expectations. Hey, if you want your new Romeo, it's going to be August. If you want your new Rio, it's going to be April or May. You got to get in line, get the order in and get in line. So, customer disappointment comes from not hitting expectations. And so we do as good a job as we can to set the right expectations and hit them. So it hasn't been an overall big problem.
Okay. So has this situation affected your company's reputation or overall integrity within the industry?
Not at all. In no way whatsoever. I would actually argue that it improved our reputation because of how we handle everything with a high degree of transparency. And we just share with people exactly what's going on. People like that, and it gets them more engaged.
Okay. Here's one from YouTube. Which unit's price was lowered and which ones got a raise?
Rose, Rose. So we've got a couple products, as you know, that feature Rosa, and specifically the two products I'm talking about are Rio Original or Rio Standard. We kind of use both names interchangeably. We should standardize on them. But you got the Rio, the original Rio, and then you have Rosa P. Both of these are kind of power options, right? Rio is a solar power option. Rosa P is taking power off of a pole, usually a parking light pole, which is on a switched power circuit. So when you order any one of those products, you can either get it with one Rosa, which is what the base order comes with, or you can get it what we call Rosa Tandem, which is with a second Rosa. So you get 4 cameras, 360-degree visibility to the light boards and the LED boards. And that second piece that slaps on the back is called Rosa Tandem. We reduced the price of Tandem because we started picking up some big economies of scale related to Rosa. So we reduced the price of Tandem while increasing our margin on Tandem. So that was something really good. We increased pricing on Rio, Rio Mini, Romeo, and I think that's it. I think those are the price increases and decrease. Yep.
Okay. Can you go over like the tech support of deployments, like how RAD and AITX help support the customers that you deal with on a day-to-day basis?
Well, sure. I mean, we become a really strong partner to our end users. We develop real relationships with them. And this is kind of our business model. Legacy business model is you ship them the product, you support them to get it up and running, and then you figure out when you can sell them something new. Our business model is much more service-based, relationship-based. We are in the business getting to know their business for a couple reasons. We want to understand their goals so that number one, we can maybe create some new products to help them get there. Number two, our stuff is new and we have to share the new paradigm and sell people on it. So so we're really close with our customers across the board. That's how we do tech support.
Okay.
It's one of the reasons why lead times is just part of the relationship, right? Because they're not just expecting a box. during the time that we may have lead time, we're building the relationship, we're working on how we're going to set up the Rosa or the Rio, we're doing prep time, and it all works out that way. Customers are very happy with that.
Speaking about happy customers, right? So you file an 8K on Friday after close. That was upwards of $235,000 for a single payment. Is that a recurring monthly revenue payment or a one-time sales payment? And will there be any accompanying press release disclosing the sales of these units?
There won't be an accompanying press release. I mean, I found that payment was a notable event, and I had included it in our weekly update, the weekly video update that went yesterday, because I thought it was a notable event. When I ran the weekly through legal, the attorney came back to me and he found it to be a material event and wanted to make an 8K on it prior to the video going out yesterday morning. So that's what happened. But I think that issue is closed at this point. It was a few sales, so one-time payments, not recurring monthly, not yet. But yeah, that's I think that covers the points you asked.
Was it one dealer or one client?
Yep, one end user, our largest end user client that we've been waiting on to give us the approval to issue the press release.
That's awesome. All right. Next question. Steve, per each queue, we burn roughly 3 to 5 million. With the expectations to grow the team and the staff, per projections of 800,000 recurring monthly revenue, how are we going to be profitable?
Well, there's a degree of speculation in that question, but I'll answer to the best of my ability. First thing is I understand it's kind of convenient to use the word burn. I would argue with that word in this context of the question, because we certainly don't burn $3 to $5 million. We invest $3 to $5 million in parts, people, plant, technology, and those kinds of things. It's very far from a burn. It's money that, depending on where you're at in finance, you would argue goes directly to what's called our enterprise value. So definitely not burn. The next part of that question is $800,000 a month, right? Recurring monthly revenue. That's about $10 million a year in annual revenue on an ARR, annual revenue run rate, and that can or should make us cash flow positive because of how we do things. So that gets married to profitability, and that's the kind of the answer to the question, right? Around those numbers, we're pretty close to profitability at the moment that I had said that. But as I always say, we're in a land grab. We need to create more technology. We need to create potentially more form factors. We need to enhance ROS. We need to do a lot of stuff to become this incumbent and achieve these big dreams that we have. So as I've said, and I'll continue to say until the tune changes, we will make decisions that are best to hit our overall goals. I'm less interested in being a profitable company at $10 million in revenue than I am in building a company that can get $1 billion or $2 billion in revenue over time. So depending on what kind of investor you are, you'll either relate to that or you won't. But we've got big goals, big dreams. What we're trying to do in the meantime is build responsibly in these budget constraints that we have, but know that I really wish we had more access to capital so we can build staff, get products out faster, build more teams. We are lean. We are lean at 85 to 100 people. Trust me, we are lean. Anyway, so that's the best answer I could give.
Okay, that projection of 800,000, was that before or after you decided to raise prices?
Before. So
Okay.
basically, I'll open up that spreadsheet right now because it's on my desk all the time. And I ran it with the new with the new numbers in it.
Mm-hmm.
And so there was a component. It basically, so basically what I'm saying is I'm not necessarily, when I give out those projections, I'm not as necessarily tied to the gross revenue number as I am to the number of devices deployed number. Those number of devices deployed that we have in the queue and that we put in the accompanying press release. Now, the price increases and some other changes that we made, some small changes that we made, they raise the gross revenue that should come from that build, those numbers that I shared, by 20% overall. So technically speaking, if we hit those goals, then we should be closer to $960,000 in recurring monthly revenue versus the 800 if we hit those device goals the way that we're projecting.
Okay. So
It's a good
we
thing.
had,
It's a great thing. Yeah.
yeah. So we had a big influx of new investors and new eyes on the company over the last couple of days. Can you explain what AITX is to one of these new investors?
No, I'm not on this call. This is an AMA. I'm not pitching. Go to AITX.ai, watch the videos on YouTube. This call is for Ask Me Anything related to investments and so on and so forth. There's more than enough information out there regarding what the company does and how it does it.
Okay. Uh, Another question. Would you ever just sell the software and not the whole device?
That's what Ross is. Ross is a straight software sale. So yeah, absolutely yes.
Is Ross a one-time fee or is it RMR?
Ross's monthly RMR. Absolutely. You build the best value as a company when you have that customer in perpetuity. That's when you get the big valuations. You know, that's what it's about. That's what motivates us. So it's because Wall Street can give you anywhere from 20 to 60 times EBIT, depending on the state of the market and the timing and your growth rate. And that's when you get the big valuations. And those are some of the things that we're counting on for what we hope to be our eventual uplist to NASDAQ. Ross itself, like I'll give an example on Ross, right? I had a call with a prospect on Friday. Prospect referred from like a Fortune 10 customer to another, large Fortune 100 organization. And I'm talking to him and I'm introducing him to Ross and some of the other stuff. And he's like, I have a $62 million budget to harmonize all of our video management systems across all of our locations. He's like, I got to get Ross in this mix for the evaluation. I was like, great. I was like, yes. I was like, we will blow them away. So pretty exciting there.
How fast does it take to actually deploy Ross?
Just got to get him a server running NVIDIA GPUs and change the streams, or not change the streams, but add existing camera streams to the existing cameras to redirect to the new server, and you're off and running. It's literally that easy.
Pretty quick. No backlog on that then, seems.
No backlog on that. There's some backlog on the servers that we're using. We're using Bison servers. So some of those are, 4 to 8 weeks away, depending on how we're configuring them. But again, it's not like we're waiting for 1,000 parts to come in and then build it. Yeah, the VMS industry itself is $1 billion, and it's fat. By that, I mean there are high license fees that make the incumbent VMS manufacturers a ton of money, and they're locked into that pricing model. They're locked in that pricing model. They won't, we'll be a tiny, tiny, tiny piece for a little bit, and then hopefully, because our pricing model is so aggressive, we'll just take over that business. There's a bunch of other advantages for Ross in the VMS market as well. Opens up new channels for us. It goes to the fact that we have to keep developing, that this is a big play. This isn't a little play to build a $50 million company. This is a much bigger play than that. And that's just a great example of one of the areas that we're in.
I've been excited for Ross since you, even before you announced it. I was hoping it would come out.
Yeah, well, we've been working on it for a long time. Um, the thing about ROS that makes it so cool is that it's the new backbone for the field devices as well. So this is one of the reasons why it takes a lot of dev. When we move from an edge platform, which is Intel, Microsoft based, into an edge platform that is NVIDIA, Ubuntu based. So you can, I mean, whoever's in the software dev world that's on the call right now, they'll sympathize with us for the amount of code that had to be reconfigured in order to do that. So that comes out March, April.
Okay. Um, Talking about new developments, any pre-orders on Rad Dog?
No, we haven't asked for pre-orders on Rad Dog yet.
Okay. Is there a plan for Europe or just introducing by opportunities?
Um, yeah, you know, we've got a couple things in Europe right now. We have a dealer out in Romania. Their labor costs are going through the roof as well. So our president had a call with their president just a few days ago. So we've got a North American backlog that we need to focus on first, and we've got, you know, low-hanging fruit here in North America that needs to be tended to first. We also need to, now that we have the 3.2 platform coming down, that's the platform that will get CE certified. And then once that happens, then we'll really work hard to support that European dealer and see what other business we can do there. Yeah. But, you know, I follow an old adage, which is if you can't be successful in your own backyard, you know, don't leave it. Don't leave it till you are.
Yeah, so I recently saw Kevin was out and what I believe to be Belgium based off some photos that you shared on Twitter. How was that training?
Good. Good. It was good. Yeah. No, happy customer.
Was it
Uh,
for like the Toms or Rosa
yep.
or
It was for Tom's. Yep.
okay. So would you be open to a moderated forum to interact with the community along with these AMAs, such as like through Twitter spaces?
Yeah. No problem at all. Yeah. I love the interaction. I love being available. I love knowing what questions are going through people's minds. Yeah. The answer is yes, for sure. Yeah. You know, the next AMA will also be on Spaces, by the way.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, is there any opportunity to have maybe like your CFO or Mark or someone else on the team on that spaces with you?
I don't think so. I don't see the value there. You know, number one, neither of those guys have the securities training that I do in terms of how to answer questions, what to answer, what not to, and just would pose an unnecessary risk. So I don't see it. I also don't see, you know, level of questioning that would come up on those things that would require that level of team member to be on to address anything. It's I don't see the need for it. The other piece is, you know, there's a lot of work going on. You know, I mean, we run thin, like I said, you know, to the extent that I have a standing call with Mark on Sunday mornings, which I took before this call. I have a few standing calls on Sunday mornings. So our week kind of bleeds into Sunday for most of us and Saturday for a lot of us as well. These things, if you're not ready for them, prepared for them, you know, you got to put some time in, you got to be ready. And there's incremental diminishing returns really value by having anybody else on the call. If you don't
Okay.
like me, I don't know what to say. Like if you want more folks, but um I don't know. I mean, I'm the guy, the buck stops with me.
Okay. So AI robots have made great strides in recent years. However, the public perception of unmanned robots can still conjure images of Terminator-esque interactions. How do you think this perception can be changed?
Well, you know, the assumption in the question is that there's a perception that robots are negative in the general public, and I would argue with that base perception. We use robots or robotic systems or platforms or AI-enabled platforms literally from the moment we wake up to the moment we go to bed. So, you know, is there going to be sensationalism and hysteria about stuff that happens? For sure there will be. And it's really up for the companies, for the manufacturers and their clients to be able to clearly communicate the purpose and the need and the controls and so forth on these devices. So will the sensationalism help bring eyeballs and ears to the developments that AI is bringing to society? Yes. And is it a part of, humanity to, be change resistant and then go through a period of conflict, so to speak, before we emerge with the way forward? Yeah, that's pretty much how we do things. So you see it happening right now. You see Boston Dynamics deploying a dog with New York PD and using it in a way that wasn't palatable, and the project getting canceled. You see that with some other ground-based robotics as well. So together we'll live and learn. You can equate this back to the initial implementation of automobiles. And if you read newspapers from 100, 110, 120 years ago, which, are fun to read, about automobiles, you'll see, people were up in arms and this is so crazy. How could this horseless carriage is the end of the world, da, 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 right? And you go, okay, I get it. And then you can even fast forward to the 50s and the 60s with seatbelts, with the implication with the starting to require seatbelts in cars, and eventually starting to have seatbelts a requirement to drive at all. And people are just resistant to any change, even if it's for their own good or the good of society at large. So the implementation of this technology won't be any different.
Okay. Are there any supply chain issues with RadPack? And is there one or multiple suppliers for that?
Yeah, for sure there are. We've changed course a couple times on RadPack development in terms of the chipsets that we've decided to use, simply because of availability. So we're waiting right now, quite frankly, on different NVIDIA chips to be made available. They're supposed to be available in February or March. But now that we've kind of finalized that platform, we are at the whim, so to speak, of the big foundries to produce those chips and get them in our hands, much like everybody else is. So we've gone through as much discovery and trial and trying different chips to get to the point we're at now. We're just kind of fixed. So we've limited ability to change the hardware architecture at this point.
Okay. Circling back to the roundtable discussion on Friday, do you see any shorting of the stock? And if not, what do you propose to do to get the stock value back up?
Well, we're combining a couple issues there, right? So the first question is, do I see any shorting of the stock? So I do not look at the stock during the day, generally speaking. Somebody will usually text me or, hey, the stock's doing great or the stock's not doing great, whatever it is. But, me looking at the stock doesn't do anything. It doesn't help the stock. It doesn't help our business. I've got a job to do, and the market's going to do what it's going to do with the stock. And I've got to focus on what I can do, what I can affect. So when you're asking me questions about, getting the stock to where it should be or anything like that, those are questions I can't answer, because if I said the stock should be at X, then, the SEC attorneys tell me, hey, that's a leading question, that's setting an expectation. And in my role, I can't do that. So the stock, I can say that I'm very happy when the stock goes up, and I want the stock to go up continuously, right? I absolutely do. Do I have some price targets in mind? I do, and I can't share them for the reasons that I just mentioned. The shorting piece, because I'm not looking at L2 all day, what I get is from some of our institutionals, a couple of our institutionals, they'll say, oh, I just saw this market maker on L2. They don't have any shares, so they're probably doing naked shorting. And, so I don't have facts per se. I just have feelings from people whom I trust on the institutional high finance side. I don't believe that shorting for the last few months has been a major factor in the performance of the AITX stock. And I think that we've shown enough resiliency to, show the investment community that, driving down the stock of AITX is not going to crush the company, and that we have survived various challenges over the past several years, and we won't stop until we achieve our thing. So I think that that's been, I believe that that's, one of the reasons, one of the defenses that we have, because we're not totally entirely dependent on the market for continuing operations. So that's it. Now, what are we going to do about it? Well, the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to talk about it, right? We're going to acknowledge that there's a problem. Even if I don't feel that the problem is rampant for AITX itself, we've got investors in AITX that have other holdings. Of course, I think that everybody's holdings portfolio should only and ever be AITX, but I'm a little biased as far as that goes. But I want to make corrections to the market because I think it'll improve liquidity, trust, sensible changes like cause and reaction. You issue a nice press release, stock goes up, those kinds of things, because I care about our retail investors. I care about the market at large. I care about liquidity. But I don't see a gross problem for AITX at this moment.
Okay. Next question comes from the Discord.
Sorry, CP, Dark Watcher. Yes, you can say it. And yes, I could nod my head and say, yeah. Sorry, CP, back to you.
All right. Has the remaining balance of the 1,000+ shell order been received?
No, we just have the half the order is a little over half. I think it's about 550 or so shells with the boxes. Now the boxes, which are all stamped with the old rad logo, I think that we received 1,000+ of those. I think we did a full run of those, and half of the Rosa shells. Yeah.
Okay. And also, can you give us an update on the ERP?
Yeah, the ERP has descended into the normal status of an ERP in most enterprise organizations, which is a little bit of love and a little bit of hate, and usually a little bit of extra work left to do. We have transitioned sales management and order processing into the ERP. That's done. We have a lot of the inventory in. We have all the base accounting is done now as well through the ERP. We are and have been looking for a materials manager, which will go a long way to completing the kind of the flow, the full order flow of purchase order to inventory pulling to production to packaging and shipping, deployment, revenue. So we're still a little weak in those early stages. Material manager will help with that, as well as a greater stability on the build list will help with that as well. Like I said, we suffer from having to make a variety of changes kind of on the fly, which hurts ERP implementation because we are a small company and I hate staff and clerical positions. And so my entire career, I've always understaffed those roles because I'm looking for, primarily to spend money on production positions, sales positions, implementation positions, those types of positions, and have a small and efficient back of house.
And like you said before, that you like to run lean.
We have to run lean. When we're taking investors' money to build a company, and we're not getting a lot of money, we're not dripping in cash. Every dollar's got to count. So yeah. And that's one of the reasons why it's like, yeah, can I open up a couple staff positions? Sure. But I will share credit to our CFO because, we share same brain sometimes, share a lot of the same brain with a lot of our executive team. And I'm like, Tony, his name's Anthony. I say, Tony, hey man, why don't you get another junior accountant on board? Da, 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 da. And he's like, I think we could stretch and do with what we have. I'm like, okay, perfect. Let's do that. But in my mind, I still know he needs another junior accountant on board sooner rather than later.
In due time, in due time.
Well said.
Do you see anything in the future to partner with other home security companies, for example, Ring, and apply software like Ross, or maybe make similar software to those security cameras?
I don't. I see us as firmly industrial commercial at the moment. I understand that there is an instinct and a drive from retail investors to have something tangible that they could get their hands on. I get that. I appreciate that, and I love that. Through our esports team, we're going to do something on the gaming side, which, isn't exactly on the security side, but it's on the tech side. So look for that March. But we have talked about a residential ROSA, and I've said that I do want to bring it to market, and I do want to bring it through, regular retail distribution, Costco, and so forth. But it required the build out of the R3.2 platform, which is the NVIDIA Ubuntu platform. And we're getting close on that. We got to get production up and running on that. I don't have, enough engineers and software developers to build everything I want, which goes back to the fact, hey, we're doing a big thing. And there's also some evolution in my head for for residential ROSA on the technical side that I think we would want to invest in and make before we brought that product to market. I think that building it off of the first couple phases of R3.2 won't be cost effective in the manner of how I want to bring it to the market. But yeah, it's on our minds. We're working towards a residential product, but we're not looking to team up with anybody.
Okay, so Michael Singleton from YouTube has a question. So maybe would there be a spinoff for home security system like Red Residential, like a subsidiary or something like that?
It's really not in our thought process right now. I just kind of shared like my most up-to-date thought process with it, which is get the R3.2 platform out into the commercial industrial product mix, and then continue doing some stuff on the tech side in order to get the cost down, which at that point we can look at the residential product. From a business formation standpoint, are we going to open up a separate division? I don't know. I just don't have my mind space there yet at all. I'm still trying to get there technically and cost wise.
Okay. Is it possible to send a letter with information or a video about raw security to every state's capital, telling the person in charge of the state's schools to watch for the gun security program that you have?
Sure. I mean, we do a lot of stuff and we have a lot of grassroots activism as well. Many people on this call have reached out to their local representatives and have done stuff like that. And we've got some contacts, some relatively high level contacts in different legislatures. And I've got some guys that, can connect us to the DC power brokers when we need and when we want. And it's really a balance of how and why are we going to spend our time. One of the reasons why politically we're not super active yet is because it feels from a business standpoint that everybody has to take sides. And we view this as a nonpartisan type of issue as far as firearm detection goes. But I just know that it's going to be politicized because everything is now, it feels like, and I'm not ready to be lumped into either side yet. Will we be at some point? Probably. We will have to be. But for the time being, we want to get firearm detection into schools on a direct, what I call hand-to-hand combat, which is where we're talking to school officials and school board officials directly, and then really work that kind of groundswell of support after our first few implementations are done and see where it goes from there.
Okay. Next one. I understand the need for NDAs, but what is the reason why there are no video captures of Romeo or even Rosa in action?
Well, there's certainly video captures of Rosa, but the Romeos that are deployed are all, tatted up, they all got their company logos on them and stuff. So I have shown different photos over the last year or so of Rosas. In some cases, I've obscured the Romeos. In some cases, I've obscured the logos. And we've certainly shown different Rosa stuff over the last year as well, Rosas in action. So maybe we'll do more. I hear what you're saying. Maybe we'll do more. What you got next, CP?
So someone gave some questions into Chat GPT to prompt some questions. What are good questions to ask a CEO of a robotic security company? And one came back, how does AITX approach ethical considerations and regulations surrounding the use of autonomous robots?
Well, listen, I'm going to ask you, CP, to please give me the human-based questions, Like, I don't want to answer questions from ChatGPT, right? We're humans. This is a human event. Let's keep it human. But I'll answer that question. For any of the new folks that are on the call, I've said before that we don't do any bio-identification on anybody, right? Which is a huge ethical concern. So that's one of the ways that we handle it. We also handle it through a lot of transparency with what we do and how we do it. We handle it through how we handle cyber. And so we're not in a space per se where, ethnic targeting or things like that really apply. We're not creating sentencing requirements, in the legal system. We're not using an algorithm to determine creditworthiness. So we don't really fall into this space where it's a huge concern for us at this moment.
Okay. Along with SOC 2 validation, is AITX pursuing any other industry certs like ISO 27001?
We are pursuing ISO 27001, and I believe that we also just attained our SOC 2 Type 2 as well. We were SOC 2 Type 1, but I believe we're SOC 2 Type 2 now, which was a huge deal. And we got a huge certification from a super big company that's a really meaningful cyber certification. And I asked them last week, I said, can we go public with this? Because it is such a big deal, and I haven't heard back yet. So I'm really hoping that we get that one. This one takes SOC 2 Type 2 to like a new level. It incorporates some elements of ISO 27001, but it's a really, really great certification that I'm dying to share with everybody. Until we have permission, I won't.
Okay. And as you said before, you are working towards CE as well over in Europe.
Yeah, we have to get the hardware stabilized before you go into CE. Otherwise, you're just chasing your tail.
Okay. Here's one from YouTube. Is a communication company project still in the mix?
Absolutely, it is. We were there early December. I need to color within the lines. It's well within the mix still, yes.
Okay, good. Next question. Would you consider sharing a deployment number with the sales PRs when reporting?
Yeah, for sure I would, but those types of specific material numbers have to go through a greater process before we can issue them. And the way that Doug and I write press releases is, we kind of bandy about an idea, we write it up, we send it through legal. If there's a partner involved, we get approval done, and we do it very quickly. Like, we do it within a matter of hours. So for me to do deployment number, it's going to take several days, and I got to do backup and all that, all stuff that's kind of involved in an audit or a queue, which is why I've said that we will definitely update those numbers in a queue. Giving the play-by-play on every sales PR, it's more work for, I think, diminishing returns. I know it would satisfy people's curiosity, but the PR isn't to do a full update. The PR is to share whatever the incident or event was that I think is notable or material to share with the group.
Okay. To follow up with a press release, there have been a lot of great press releases in the past year, using them to show forward statements such as additional details will be released in the future and complete details are expected, but no mention or update thereafter. Would there be any way to include like a brief summary and maybe the Q or something like the K?
Well, there is always follow-up on the things that we say. So a blanket statement of, hey, make great claims and there's no follow-up is not correct. I would ask to be more specific in the question. Hey, what specific elements do you want the follow-up on? So that I can address them. Understanding that some stuff I say to get out there in the marketplace because I think that it's significant and I want the fans, followers, investors to have the information. It could take a long time before there's a material follow-up event to share. But certainly, I never say anything ever that doesn't have real follow-up behind it. Just
Okay.
sometimes takes longer. And if you have any examples, hey, I'll see what I can share right now.
All right. Let me see what I could pull real quick.
Sure.
Actually, we just talked about the communications company. The company allocated 400 million shares existing for capital raise for the autonomous robot Dave, right? Is there any update on that?
We filed very specifically. So exactly what happened was we filed a ProSup, which is a prospectus supplemental, which is part of the S3, which has been public for a couple of years. And we filed for the 400 million additional shares, I want to say December or January. The shares went into the market. We used the money as was described in the ProSup. The ProSup definitely didn't say, hey, all this money is going to Dave. It said it's going to general company operations, including R&D related to Dave and so forth. And it does, and it has. So that's, you know, I think that's the most complete update I can give you on that.
Okay. I have one more other example. So on August 28th, 2022, you flew to Israel and tweeted meetings about finance and tech in Tel Aviv. Very exciting. Can you elaborate on that any?
Yeah. You know, as you can tell from our filings, we have a variety of funding sources, not just within the market. And, you know, I work constantly to secure different types of funding for us. And I had some interactions with people that, you know, either are funding us or will fund us because of the tech developments and the intellectual property that we're creating. And so I shared the excitement of that in that tweet. That's what happened there. It was great. It was a great visit. Yeah, great visit. It's important to me that this company achieves its objectives no matter what. And obviously, we've gone through all different kinds of waters, highs and lows to get to this point. And it's not going to stop. Share price is going to do what the share price is going to do. As I said earlier, I want this share price as high as possible, forever growing. But it's my job ultimately to make sure that this company achieves its objectives. And as such, I have to be prepared to make deals to make sure that we're funded so we can hit this, you know, hopefully profitable existence where, you know, these numbers that I have, these projections that I have in my head of how I know this company produces profit at greater revenue numbers, how we scale disproportionately, scale revenue disproportionate to scaling cost, plus acquisition plans as well. So a lot out there. And so I constantly have different kinds of meetings and talk to different kinds of people so that I can help ensure that we're going to get this company to where it needs to go.
Okay. talking about money and financials, the AS was raised about 6 months ago, and since then the price has dropped 40%. And more than half of those new shares have now been added to the outstanding shares. If that pace continues, what happens in 6 months when all the new shares have been added?
Well, again, having that kind of factual statement needs some backup for me to answer it properly. So you're saying the AS was raised and the stock went down 40%. My first question would be, was the AS raised based on Wednesday's closing price is the 40% or Friday's closing price? So and I don't remember off the top of my head. So maybe the AS, just doing a rough math, whenever that question came in, unless it came in.
It came in a couple weeks ago, maybe 2 weeks ago. So yeah, it's a little outdated with that 40%.
So in that case, the AS raise could be at the same price that we finished on Friday.
Could be, yes.
Okay, so that's the thing about these questions, we
Yeah.
gotta be specific on it. Okay, so that's the first part. So let's scrap the 40% drop thing. What was the rest of that question?
What's the plan? So, can you speak to your long-term shareholders and tell them what your measures are being taken to decrease expenses and raise revenues to help avert another authorized share raise?
Listen, there's no plans to decrease expenses. So I don't, like I've talked this whole hour saying we want to build more, spend more, grow more. We got some big things to hit. So decrease expenses in the context of shrinking the company's spend is not on the agenda. The rest of the question is purely speculative. We saw 50% gain, Friday. What are we going to see tomorrow? What are we going to see next week? Are we going to be 10 cents? Are we going to go back to 27 cents? How is that going to affect the draws that we get off of the S3? How's that going to affect our funding? How long is that going to last? These are questions that nobody knows. I understand everybody thinks that I have a crystal ball and I know where things are going to go and I know what the stock price is going to be and I know how much money we're going to raise. I don't, and nobody does, which goes back to the fact that I have to create backup plans and do the best I can for our retail investors, long-term or short-term, whatever it might be, because y'all have the same rights. I might like some of you better, but y'all have the same rights as retail shareholders, and I have the same obligation to you all, no matter what.
Absolutely. So the higher the share price, the better your S3 is going to be. Less shares issued. So it's a win-win for the share price being higher for everyone.
Which is what I explained multiple times over the years, right? I've always talked, the better the share price, the less shares get diluted. And I want to again stress this idea that dilution is bad is very different than 5 years ago. 5 years ago, me and several other OTC companies that I know we share retail investors between were subject to these massive toxic dilutive notes, which would crush retail. And I was a new CEO. I wasn't even CEO at the time, actually. But I was new to the OTC and so forth and didn't really know. I was focusing on building the business. Since taking over, of course, toxic notes are gone. I actually I announced this via tweet, I think last week, that I had managed some things to make sure a bunch of other shares will never hit the market, which is really good. So I'm out there. I'm out there making the decisions to try and keep that float low and be responsible with it to the best of my ability.
Okay, we're approaching 1 o'clock. You want to go for another couple questions?
Sure.
Well, do you still forecast a 3 to 5 time increase in recurring monthly revenue for the next fiscal year?
Yeah, I do.
Okay. I understand how companies wish to keep their security system information hidden through NDAs, but can you comment or elaborate on the comment in a recent 8K where it seems retail investors may be making things worse by inundating customers with calls trying to verify recent installations?
What's the question part of that? And we'll take this as our last question. I've got one final statement after this, but what was the question part of that?
Can you elaborate more on the comment in a recent 8K where it seems retail investors may be making things worse by inundating customers with calling to verify recent installations?
I don't know if I can elaborate on it more, but it's annoying. So I'm not, as I said in either that press release, that 8K or that Q, I'm not overly encouraged or potentially supportive of revealing every single end user that we have for just that reason. Again, it's diminishing returns. Satisfying retail investor curiosity is great, and there's value there, but we got a business to run. And I'm going to do the best I can to avoid creating self-imposed errors on that would aggravate our customers. Let's, unless there's anything else pressing, we are right up against time. I want to reiterate to everybody that, listen, we are on a big mission. It's going to take some time, as it has. Hopefully we start seeing some hockey stick style growth. It's what we're forecasting. It's what we're working towards. And I just appreciate everyone who's been on the ride. I hope everyone's doing great with the stock. And thank you for your support.
Thank you. So, Steve, I'd like to thank you for taking your time out of this busy day to answer questions from the AITX community. Just as a reminder, please like, subscribe, and sign up for notifications, and check out the other YouTube videos on this channel. Also, check out AITX.ai, radlikemyway.com, radsecurity.com, and make sure to follow Steve. Push him over that 15.7.
Woohoo!